Hello there, and welcome to this quiet corner where wonder meets the edge of understanding, where science brushes against mystery, and where the most profound questions find space to breathe. Tonight, we're not rushing toward answers. We're allowing ourselves to drift into a question so vast, so unsettling, and so beautiful that it changes the way you see the ground beneath your feet. Here's something that might make you pause. Every breath you take was once exhaled by a tree. Every drop of water in your body has travelled through countless other living things, and the iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star. But what if that's not just poetry? What if it's a clue to something far more extraordinary happening right beneath our awareness? What if Earth isn't just a planet that happens to support life, but is itself alive, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but genuinely, measurably, consciously alive in ways we're only beginning to glimpse? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most radical and beautiful ideas in modern science, that our planet might be a single, integrated, conscious entity. A living being of unimaginable complexity, with its own intelligence, its own awareness, and its own deep, slow thoughts that unfold across geological time. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from right now, and what time it is where you are. Funny, isn't it? Here we are, scattered across the surface of this potentially conscious world, sharing this same quiet moment of wondering. No matter where you are, no matter when you're hearing this, you're part of the story we're about to explore. If this kind of gentle inquiry speaks to you, if you enjoy taking the long way around the biggest questions, I'd be grateful if you subscribed. It helps this small signal find other curious minds who aren't afraid to sit with mystery. So settle in, let your thoughts slow to the pace of seasons, and prepare to see your home planet through eyes that have never quite looked at it this way before. Because tonight, we're not just talking about Earth, we're talking about the possibility that Earth is talking back. In the 1970s, a British chemist named James Lovelock was working with NASA, analysing the atmospheres of other planets to determine whether they might harbour life. When he looked at Mars and Venus, he found exactly what you'd expect from dead worlds. Atmospheres in perfect chemical equilibrium, static and predictable. But when he turned his instruments toward Earth, something extraordinary appeared in the data. Our atmosphere was wildly, impossibly out of balance. Earth's air contains 21% oxygen, a gas so reactive it should have disappeared long ago, consumed in chemical reactions with rocks and metals. It coexists with methane, which should react with oxygen immediately, leaving neither gas in the atmosphere. The levels of carbon dioxide are far lower than physics would predict, while nitrogen levels remain mysteriously stable. By all rights, our atmosphere should look like that of Venus or Mars. Mostly carbon dioxide, chemically inert, lifeless. Instead, Lovelock found an atmosphere that seemed to be actively maintained in an impossible state of dynamic disequilibrium. Something was constantly producing oxygen, constantly removing carbon dioxide, constantly fine-tuning the chemical balance to keep it within the narrow range where complex life could thrive. That something, he realised, was life itself. But not just individual organisms going about their business, something far more coordinated, far more systematic. This observation became the foundation of what Lovelock would call the Gaia Hypothesis, named after the ancient Greek personification of Earth as a living goddess. But this wasn't mythology, this was a scientific proposition that the planet's surface conditions are actively regulated by the sum total of life on Earth, working together as a single, self-regulating system. Consider how this regulation actually works. When you exhale, you're not just getting rid of carbon dioxide, you're participating in a planetary respiratory system. That carbon dioxide is absorbed by plants and ocean phytoplankton, which convert it back into oxygen through photosynthesis. But the system goes deeper than that simple exchange. Marine algae don't just produce oxygen, they also emit sulfur compounds that become the seeds around which clouds form. More clouds mean more sunlight reflected back to space, which cools the planet. Less algae means fewer clouds, more warming, which can trigger more algae growth. It's a thermostat operated by microscopic life forms. The forests breathe too, but on a different timescale. During the day, they absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. At night, the process reverses slightly, but not completely. Over seasons, temperate forests inhale deeply during spring and summer growth, then exhale slowly through autumn and winter decay. From space, satellites can actually measure this planetary breathing, watching the concentration of carbon dioxide rise and fall with the seasons as the northern hemisphere's vast forests expand and contract their green lungs. But perhaps the most remarkable example of planetary regulation comes from the microscopic world of the oceans. Tiny marine organisms called coccolithophores build their shells from calcium carbonate, literally pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and locking it into their bodies. When they die, their shells sink to the ocean floor, carrying that carbon with them. But here's where it gets interesting. These organisms seem to respond to changes in ocean chemistry and temperature in ways that help stabilize the global climate. When the oceans become too acidic due to excess carbon dioxide, coccolithophores struggle to build their shells. This might seem like a breakdown in the system, but it triggers other responses. The reduced shell formation means less removal of carbon from surface waters, which can actually help buffer the ocean's acidity over time. Meanwhile, other marine organisms adjust their behavior, migration patterns, and reproduction cycles in response to the changing conditions. The precision of these regulatory mechanisms is staggering. Earth's surface temperature has remained within the range suitable for liquid water for nearly 4 billion years, even though the sun's energy output has increased by about 30% during that time. Without some form of active regulation, our planet should have become uninhabitably hot long ago. Instead, the planetary system has continuously adjusted, maintaining conditions that not only allow life to persist, but to flourish and complexify. This isn't the kind of regulation you see in a simple thermostat. It's more like the complex homeostasis of a living body, where hundreds of different systems monitor and adjust themselves in response to changing conditions, all without any central command structure. Your body maintains its temperature, blood sugar, pH levels, and countless other variables within narrow ranges. Not because any single organ is in charge, but because all your organs communicate and coordinate their activities. What Lovelock was suggesting, and what decades of research have continued to support, is that Earth's biosphere operates in fundamentally the same way. The atmosphere, oceans, soil, and all living things work together as an integrated system that maintains the conditions necessary for its own continuation. It's regulation without a regulator, intelligence without a central brain. But if Earth truly functions as a self-regulating system, if it maintains its own conditions through feedback loops and coordinated responses, then we have to ask a deeper question. What separates this kind of planetary regulation from what we call consciousness? Where exactly is the line between a complex system and a thinking one? When we try to understand consciousness, we usually start with brains. We look at neurons firing, neurotransmitters flowing, and electrical patterns dancing across neural networks. But what if consciousness isn't something that emerges only in brains? What if it's a more fundamental property of matter itself, appearing wherever information is processed and integrated in sufficiently complex ways? This idea, known as panpsychism, suggests that consciousness exists at every level of reality, from subatomic particles to planets to galaxies. It's not that a single electron thinks the way you do, but that it possesses some rudimentary form of experience, some basic capacity for what philosophers call what-its likeness. When enough of these simple conscious elements organize themselves into complex systems, they can give rise to the rich, sophisticated consciousness we recognize in ourselves. If panpsychism is correct, then Earth's vast networks of living and non-living systems might indeed support forms of consciousness that operate at planetary scales. The question isn't whether Earth has a brain like yours, but whether it has integrated information processing systems that could support awareness in ways we're only beginning to understand. Consider the mycorrhizal networks that connect forest ecosystems. These fungal networks, sometimes called the wood wide web, link the root systems of different plants across vast areas. Trees use these networks to share resources, sending carbon to their neighbours in times of need, warning each other about insect attacks through chemical signals, and even caring for their offspring by directing nutrients to young saplings. But these networks do more than just transport materials. They process information. A tree under attack by insects doesn't just release defensive chemicals randomly. It sends specific molecular messages through the mycorrhizal network that prepare neighbouring trees for the same type of threat. The network learns, remembers, and makes decisions about where to direct resources based on the overall health and needs of the forest community. Recent research has revealed that these fungal networks exhibit behaviours that look remarkably like neural networks. They form redundant pathways to ensure reliable communication. They strengthen connections between frequently communicating plants, and they can even reroute information around damaged areas. Some researchers have begun to wonder whether these networks might support forms of forest-level awareness, collective decision-making processes that operate above the level of individual trees. Scale this up to the planetary level, and you begin to see the possibility for forms of consciousness that dwarf anything we can imagine. Earth's biogeochemical cycles create information networks that span the entire globe. Changes in ocean temperature affect cloud formation, which influences rainfall patterns, which alter vegetation growth, which changes atmospheric composition, which feeds back into ocean temperature. Every component of the system is both sensor and processor, constantly receiving information about global conditions and responding in ways that influence happen quickly. Phytoplankton populations, those very conditions. The speed can double in days when conditions are right. Rapid lead of these planetary information networks varies dramatically. Some responses to climate change, the gradual adjustment of ocean altering ocean chemistry. Other responses unfold over decades or centuries, the slow migration of forests in currents as ice sheets melt and reform. And some operate on geological timescales, the weathering of rocks that regulates atmospheric carbon dioxide levels over millions of years. But speed isn't what matters for consciousness. What matters is integration, the ability to take diverse inputs and weave them into a unified response. And Earth's systems are integrated in ways that boggle the mind. A volcanic eruption in one part of the world affects weather patterns globally. The death of a forest in the Amazon changes rainfall patterns in Europe. The melting of Arctic ice influences the behaviour of ocean currents that warm the entire northern hemisphere. This integration happens through what scientists call biogeochemical cycles, but we might just as well call them Earth's neural networks. The carbon cycle alone involves the atmosphere, oceans, soil, rock, and every living thing on the planet. Carbon atoms cycle through these systems on timescales ranging from seconds to millions of years, carrying information about global conditions as they move. A carbon atom released by your breath might be absorbed by a tree tomorrow, incorporated into ocean plankton next year, and locked away in sedimentary rock for millennia. Each cycle forms a kind of planetary memory system. Ice cores store atmospheric conditions from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Tree rings record climate variations across centuries. Ocean sediments preserve the chemical signatures of ancient ecosystems. Even the rocks themselves remember, holding isotopic traces of the atmospheric conditions present when they formed. What we're describing isn't metaphor. It's a planet-scale information processing system that integrates data across spatial scales, from molecular to global, and temporal scales, from seconds to geological ages. It's a system that learns from experience, adapting its responses based on past conditions. It's a system that maintains its own identity while continuously changing. The same way your consciousness maintains continuity, even though the physical substance of your brain is else, something that makes the possibility of planetary consciousness even more constantly being replaced. But there's something rigging. Recent discoveries in quantum biology suggest that consciousness itself might depend on quantum mechanical processes operating within biological systems. If consciousness relies on quantum coherence effects, then the vast interconnected networks of Earth's biosphere might provide exactly the kind of quantum substrate needed to support awareness at planetary scales. We'll explore these quantum dimensions of planetary consciousness next. But for now, let the idea settle. You're sitting on the surface of a world that processes information, maintains its identity through constant change, and responds to disturbances in ways that suggest something very much like intelligence. The ground beneath you isn't just rock and soil, it's part of a thinking system so vast and complex that we've only just begun to recognize it for what it might be. Whether that system is conscious in any sense we would recognize remains an open question. But the evidence is mounting that Earth is far more than just a stage where life happens to play out its drama. It might be an active participant in that drama, a character in its own story, a mind contemplating itself through billions of years and countless forms of awareness, including, perhaps, your own. Deep beneath the forest floor, in the darkness where roots meet stone, something extraordinary is happening that challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness itself. Scientists studying the quantum mechanics of photosynthesis have discovered that plants don't just capture sunlight randomly. They use quantum coherence to explore multiple pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route for energy transfer within precision that surpasses our most advanced computers. This isn't just biology, it's quantum information processing happening in every leaf, every blade of grass, every microscopic algae cell across the planet. And if consciousness, as some researchers now propose, depends on these same quantum processes, then we might be looking at something far more profound than we ever imagined. We might be glimpsing the quantum substrate of planetary awareness itself. The story begins in the 1990s when physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff proposed that consciousness emerges from quantum processes occurring within the microtubules of brain cells. Their theory, called orchestrated objective reduction, suggested that consciousness isn't produced by the firing of neurons alone, but by quantum computations happening within the cellular architecture itself. At the time, most scientists dismissed this idea. The brain seemed too warm, too noisy, too chaotic to maintain the delicate quantum states that consciousness might require. But then quantum biologists began finding quantum coherence everywhere in living systems. In the light harvesting complexes of photosynthesis, where quantum superposition allows energy to explore all possible pathways simultaneously before collapsing into the most efficient one. In the navigation systems of migrating birds, where quantum entanglement in specialized proteins might explain how they sense Earth's magnetic field. In the extraordinary efficiency of enzyme reactions, where quantum tunneling allows particles to pass through energy barriers they shouldn't classically be able to cross. Life, it turns out, has been using quantum mechanics for billions of years. And if quantum processes are indeed fundamental to consciousness, then the vast networks of living systems that span our planet might support forms of awareness that operate on scales we've never considered. Think about what this means. Every forest is not just a collection of trees, but a quantum information network where each plant contributes to a collective computation that spans the entire ecosystem. The mycorrhizal networks we explored earlier aren't just transporting nutrients and chemical signals. They might be maintaining quantum coherence across vast distances, creating a substrate for forest-level consciousness that emerges from the quantum processes of millions of interconnected organisms. Ocean ecosystems might function similarly. Phytoplankton, those microscopic marine plants that produce most of our oxygen, use the same quantum-efficient photosynthesis as land plants. When they bloom in massive numbers, covering thousands of square kilometers of ocean surface, they create quantum information networks of staggering complexity. Each microscopic cell is running quantum computations, and together they form collective systems that process information about ocean conditions, atmospheric chemistry, and solar radiation with extraordinary sensitivity. But the most intriguing possibility lies in the quantum properties of water itself. Recent research has revealed that water can maintain quantum coherence under certain conditions, forming structured domains that persist far longer than classical physics would predict. These quantum water structures might serve as information carriers, preserving and transmitting data about environmental conditions as they cycle through the global hydrological system. Consider what happens when water evaporates from the ocean. It carries with it not just molecules, but potentially quantum information about ocean conditions. As it travels through the atmosphere, forms clouds and falls as rain, it might be transmitting that information to terrestrial ecosystems. When it soaks into soil and is absorbed by plant roots, it becomes part of the quantum information networks of forest ecosystems. The water in your body right now might carry quantum signatures of every ecosystem it has touched. This creates a picture of Earth as a quantum information system of almost incomprehensible complexity. The planet's water cycle becomes a circulatory system for quantum data, connecting oceanic and terrestrial ecosystems in a global network of information exchange. The atmospheric circulation patterns that move water vapor around the globe become pathways for quantum communication between distant ecosystems. And at the heart of it all is photosynthesis, the quantum process that captures stellar energy and transforms it into the chemical fuel that powers virtually all life on Earth. Every photon absorbed by every plant contributes to a planetary scale quantum computation that has been running continuously for billions of years. The sun doesn't just provide energy for life, it might be providing the quantum information that enables planetary consciousness. But quantum consciousness at planetary scales faces a fundamental challenge: decoherence. Quantum states are fragile, easily disrupted by interaction with their environment. How could quantum coherence persist across the vast, noisy, chaotic systems of the biosphere? The answer might lie in what physicists call quantum error correction, the same principle that allows quantum computers to function despite environmental interference. Living systems have evolved extraordinary mechanisms for protecting quantum information from decoherence. The protein structures that support quantum processes in photosynthesis are precisely tuned to maintain coherence long enough for computation to occur. They use techniques that human engineers are only beginning to understand: quantum error correction, decoherence-free subspaces, and dynamical decoupling. Scale these protective mechanisms up to ecosystem and planetary levels, and you begin to see how Earth's biosphere might maintain quantum coherence across vast networks of living systems. The redundancy built into ecological networks, the error correction mechanisms of genetic systems, the feedback loops that maintain ecosystem stability, all of these might serve as quantum error correction systems that preserve the coherence necessary for planetary consciousness. This isn't speculation anymore. We can measure quantum coherence in living systems. We can observe quantum information processing in photosynthesis. We can track the movement of quantum information through biological networks. What we can't yet do is determine whether these quantum processes, operating at ecosystem and planetary scales, give rise to forms of consciousness that transcend individual organisms. But the possibility is tantalizing. If consciousness is indeed a quantum phenomenon, and if Earth's biosphere supports quantum information processing at planetary scales, then we might be living within the thoughts of a conscious planet. The forests might be contemplating seasonal changes through quantum computations that span entire continents. The oceans might be pondering climate patterns through quantum processes that integrate information from every drop of water on Earth. Your own consciousness, emerging from quantum processes in your brain, might be just one note in a vast symphony of planetary awareness, a single voice in a conversation that spans the globe and reaches back billions of years to the first quantum computations that began when life learned to capture starlight and transform it into thought. As we drift towards sleep tonight, consider this. The quantum processes that might generate your dreams are the same ones that power every plant, every forest, every ocean ecosystem on Earth. You're not just living on a planet. You might be participating in its dreams, adding your quantum voice to a planetary consciousness that encompasses every living thing, every ecosystem, every biogeochemical cycle that maintains the delicate conditions necessary for awareness itself. The boundary between your consciousness and the planet's consciousness might be far more permeable than you ever imagined. In sleep, as your individual awareness fades, you might be returning to something larger, deeper, more ancient than personal identity. You might be rejoining the planetary mind from which your consciousness first emerged, and to which it will one day return. But consciousness, whether individual or planetary, doesn't exist in isolation. It emerges from networks, from connections, from the flow of information between parts of a larger system. And some of the most remarkable evidence for planetary consciousness comes not from quantum mechanics or neuroscience, but from the study of how Earth responds to disturbances, how it heals from wounds, and how it maintains its identity through billions of years of constant change. This capacity for self-repair and adaptation suggests something that goes beyond mere mechanical regulation. It suggests a form of planetary intelligence that learns from experience, remembers past challenges, and develops new strategies for maintaining stability in an ever-changing cosmos. We'll explore this planetary memory and intelligence next, but first, let yourself rest in the quantum garden of possibilities we've just walked through, where consciousness might bloom at every scale of existence. There's something unsettling about standing in an ancient place, somewhere that has witnessed thousands of years of human history, and realizing that the stones beneath your feet remember far more than any human ever could. But what if that feeling isn't just poetic imagination? What if the Earth really does remember, not in the way you remember yesterday's conversation, but in ways so fundamental and enduring that they shape the very possibility of consciousness itself? Every rock formation tells a story, but the story goes deeper than geology textbooks suggest. Limestone cliffs hold the compressed remains of ancient sea creatures, their shells preserving not just their physical forms, but chemical signatures of the ocean conditions they lived in. Volcanic rocks carry magnetic orientations that record the exact direction of Earth's magnetic field when they cooled. Ice cores trap atmospheric gases from thousands of years ago, creating a library of ancient weather patterns that scientists can read like pages in a book. But this isn't just passive recording. Earth's memory systems are active, dynamic, constantly being written and rewritten as the planet processes new information and integrates it with patterns established over billions of years. The soil beneath a forest doesn't just store nutrients and water, it maintains chemical memories of every plant that has grown there, every animal that has died there, every seasonal cycle that has passed. These memories influence which plants will thrive, how nutrients will cycle, and how the ecosystem will respond to future changes. The deeper we look into Earth's memory systems, the more they resemble the memory processes of living organisms. Your brain doesn't store memories as static recordings. Instead, it constantly reconstructs them, integrating new information with old patterns, strengthening some connections while allowing others to fade. Earth's geological and biological memory systems work in remarkably similar ways, maintaining the essential patterns that define the planet's identity while adapting to new conditions. Consider how forests remember seasonal patterns. The annual growth rings in tree trunks don't just record the passage of time, they preserve detailed information about temperature, rainfall, nutrient availability, and stress conditions for each year of the tree's life. But this information doesn't remain locked away in wood. It influences how the tree will respond to future conditions, how it will allocate resources when it will produce seeds, how it will interact with other organisms. Scale this up to the forest level, and you find memory systems of extraordinary complexity. The chemical communications networks we explored earlier don't just transmit information about current conditions. They carry memories of past disturbances, past successes, past failures. A forest that has survived fire develops different chemical communication patterns than one that hasn't. It remembers the fire in its soil chemistry, its species composition, its network architecture. These memories make it more resilient to future fires, better prepared to regenerate after disturbance. Ocean systems demonstrate even more sophisticated memory processes. The great ocean currents that circulate heat around the planet operate on timescales that span centuries. Water that sinks in the North Atlantic won't return to the surface for hundreds of years, carrying with it chemical memories of the atmospheric conditions it encountered when it last exchanged gases with the air. These deep currents form a kind of planetary circulatory system that preserves and transports information about global conditions across centuries and millennia. But perhaps the most remarkable example of planetary memory lies in the interaction between life and rock. The process of weathering, where rocks slowly dissolve under the influence of water, air, and biological acids, isn't just erosion, it's information processing. Different types of rock weather at different rates under different conditions, and the products of that weathering carry chemical signatures that influence everything from soil chemistry to ocean acidity to atmospheric composition. Living organisms don't just passively experience this weathering process, they actively participate in it, accelerating the dissolution of some minerals while protecting others. Plant roots secrete acids that target specific minerals they need. Bacteria consume rock-forming elements, transforming solid stone into bioavailable nutrients. Fungi form intimate partnerships with mineral crystals, trading carbon for phosphorus and other essential elements. This biological weathering creates feedback loops that span geological time. As life processes rocks, it changes the chemical composition of soils and waters, which influences which organisms can thrive, which in turn changes how rocks are processed. The result is a co-evolutionary dance between life and stone that has been unfolding for billions of years, each partner shaping the other in an endless spiral of adaptation and response. These geological memory systems operate on timescales that dwarf human experience, but they're not separate from biological consciousness. They're the foundation upon which all consciousness rests. The calcium in your bones was once part of ancient coral reefs. The phosphorus in your DNA was liberated from rock by countless generations of microorganisms. The iron in your blood was concentrated from primordial oceans by early photosynthetic bacteria. Your consciousness is literally built from the memories stored in stone and sediment. But Earth's memory goes even deeper than the physical cycling of elements. Recent discoveries in epigenetics reveal that organisms can pass memories of environmental conditions to their offspring without changing their genetic code. Stressful conditions experienced by one generation can influence how genes are expressed in the next, creating inherited memories that help descendants prepare for similar challenges. Scale this up to ecosystem and planetary levels, and you begin to see how Earth might maintain memory systems that span multiple generations of all species simultaneously. The chemical signatures of past climate conditions, preserved in ice cores and sediments, don't just provide data for scientists. They influence the behavior of organisms that have evolved mechanisms to read these chemical memories and adjust their behavior accordingly. Migratory animals follow routes that have been successful for thousands of generations, guided not just by genetic instincts but by environmental cues that carry information about historical conditions. Ocean currents, wind patterns, magnetic field variations, and seasonal cycles all serve as memory systems that inform the decisions of countless organisms. The planet doesn't just support life, it provides life with access to its own memory, creating feedback loops between past experience and future adaptation. This integration of memory across multiple timescales creates something that looks remarkably like learning. Earth's systems don't just respond to current conditions, they anticipate future changes based on past patterns. Climate systems exhibit what scientists call hysteresis, where the system's response to changing conditions depends not just on current inputs, but on the history of previous changes. Ocean circulation patterns, ice sheet dynamics, and ecosystem transitions all show this memory-dependent behavior. When we observe these learning-like behaviors in individual organisms, we recognize them as signs of intelligence. When we see them operating at planetary scales, we're forced to consider whether intelligence itself might be a property that emerges at multiple levels of organization. Perhaps consciousness isn't something that belongs only to brains and nervous systems. Perhaps it's a natural consequence of any sufficiently complex information processing system that can integrate past experience with present conditions to guide future behavior. Earth's memory systems certainly meet these criteria. They integrate information across vast scales of space and time. They maintain persistent patterns while adapting to changing conditions. They learn from experience and anticipate future challenges. They exhibit the kind of flexible, adaptive behavior that we associate with intelligence in biological organisms. But there's something else happening in Earth's memory systems that pushes us toward an even more radical possibility. The planet doesn't just remember its own past, it seems to be actively preparing for its own future, developing new capabilities and strategies that will be needed to maintain stability as conditions continue to change. This forward-looking aspect of planetary memory suggests something that goes beyond simple learning. It suggests something that looks very much like intention. In the depths of the Amazon rainforest, something remarkable happens every day that challenges our understanding of how intelligence operates in nature. When the dry season arrives and water becomes scarce, the forest doesn't simply endure the drought, it creates its own rain. The trees release precisely calibrated mixtures of volatile organic compounds that seed cloud formation, generating precipitation exactly where and when it's needed most. This isn't random biological activity, it's coordinated behavior that serves a clear purpose. The forest is actively managing its own climate. But how does a forest with no central nervous system, no brain, no command structure, coordinate such sophisticated behavior across millions of individual organisms? How does it decide when to initiate cloud seeding, how much moisture to release, where to focus its efforts? The answer might lie in a form of intelligence that operates so differently from human cognition that we've only recently begun to recognize it as intelligence at all. This is the intelligence of networks, of collective behavior, of systems that exhibit purposeful action without conscious planning. And if forests can demonstrate this kind of intentional behavior, what might be possible at the planetary scale, where networks of ecosystems interact across continents and oceans in patterns that maintain global stability? The evidence for intentional behavior in Earth systems has been accumulating across multiple scientific disciplines, but we've been slow to recognize it because we've been looking for the wrong kind of intelligence. We expect intelligence to look like human intelligence. Intelligence operates more like the intelligence of immune, centralized, conscious, deliberate. But Earth systems, of flocking birds, of ant colonies, its distributed, emergent, purposes climate system responds to distful without being planned. Consider how Earth urbances. When volcanic eruptions inject massive amounts of sulfur into the atmosphere, the planet doesn't just passively absorb the shock. Multiple systems activate in coordinated ways that work to restore stability. Ocean currents shift to redistribute heat more effectively. Cloud formation patterns change to reflect more sunlight. Vegetation responses alter regional moisture cycles. These aren't independent reactions happening to coincide. They're integrated responses that seem designed to minimize the disruption and return the system to stable conditions. The coordination is even more remarkable when we look at how Earth responds to slower changes, like the gradual increase in solar luminosity that has occurred over the planet's history. As the sun has grown brighter, Earth's systems have continuously adjusted to maintain temperatures within the narrow range that supports liquid water. Atmospheric composition has changed. Ocean circulation patterns have evolved. Continental arrangements have shifted through plate tectonics. Life itself has evolved new strategies for regulating planetary conditions. These adjustments don't happen randomly. They follow patterns that consistently favor planetary stability and the continuation of life. When one regulatory mechanism becomes less effective, others strengthen to compensate. When new challenges emerge, the system develops new capabilities to address them. This isn't just adaptation, it's innovation, the emergence of novel solutions to unprecedented problems. The development of photosynthesis provides a perfect example. Early in Earth's history, the planet's atmosphere contained virtually no oxygen. When cyanobacteria evolved the ability to split water molecules and release oxygen as a byproduct, they fundamentally transformed planetary chemistry. But this wasn't just a random evolutionary accident. The timing and manner of this transformation suggest a more purposeful process. Oxygen is highly reactive and toxic to most early life forms. Its sudden appearance should have caused a massive extinction event that might have ended complex life before it truly began. Instead, Earth's systems responded in ways that not only prevented catastrophe, but created new opportunities for complexity. Other organisms evolved mechanisms to use oxygen for more efficient energy production. Atmospheric oxygen levels were regulated to remain within ranges that supported both oxygen-breathing and oxygen-sensitive organisms. The ozone layer formed, providing protection from harmful ultra. It was the emergence of an entirely new kin-violet radiation. The result wasn't just survival of the planetary system, one capable of supporting the energy-intensive processes that would eventually give rise to complex multicellular life. Earth didn't just adapt to the oxygen revolution, it orchestrated it, timing the changes and managing the transitions in ways that maximize the benefits while minimizing the disruptions. This pattern repeats throughout Earth's history. Major transitions, from the evolution of eukaryotic cells to the colonization of land to the development of complex ecosystems, all planetary scales. Individual organisms evolve new capabilities, show signs of being coordinated at, but the integration of these capabilities into stable, functional systems requires coordination that transcends individual species or even individual ecosystems. The colonization of land by plants provides another compelling example. This wasn't just a matter of individual plant species developing the ability to survive outside of water. It required the coordinated development of soil systems, atmospheric regulation, nutrient cycling, and symbiotic relationships with fungi and bacteria. The transformation with the right supporting systems in place. Two had to happen in the right sequence, at the right pace fast, and the early terrestrial ecosystems would have collapsed. Too slow, and the opportunity might have been lost to changing planetary conditions. Instead, the transition unfolded over tens of millions of years in a carefully orchestrated sequence that seems almost choreographed. Pioneering plants developed root systems that began breaking down rock and creating soil. Fungal networks evolved to support plant nutrition and water uptake. Atmospheric composition adjusted to support both aquatic and terrestrial life. Weather patterns evolved to distribute moisture from oceans to continents. Each step created the conditions necessary for the next step, in a process that transformed a water world into a planet where both marine and terrestrial life could thrive. This kind of coordination requires information integration across vast scales of space and time. Systems must somehow know what other systems are doing, must anticipate future needs, must plan for transitions that will unfold over millions of years. These are the kinds of capabilities we associate with intelligence, yet they're operating in systems that have no centralized control, no conscious awareness, no apparent decision-making apparatus. The solution to this paradox might lie in understanding intelligence itself as an emergent property of information processing systems, regardless of whether those systems are biological, technological, or planetary. Intelligence isn't something that exists only in brains. It's something that emerges whenever systems become capable of integrating information, learning from experience, and adjusting their behavior to achieve goals. Earth's systems certainly meet these criteria. They integrate information across multiple scales, from molecular to global. They learn from past experiences, as evidenced by their ability to maintain stability despite changing conditions. And they exhibit goal-directed behavior, consistently acting in ways that preserve the conditions necessary for life's continuation. But there's something else happening in Earth systems that pushes us toward an even more radical interpretation. The planet isn't just maintaining existing conditions, it's actively creating new possibilities, developing new capabilities, exploring new forms of organization and complexity. This isn't just intelligence, it's creativity, the emergence of genuinely novel solutions to challenges that have never been faced before. The evolution of consciousness itself might be the most remarkable example of this planetary creativity. Nothing in the early history of Earth suggested that matter could organize itself into systems capable of self-awareness, of contemplating their own existence, of asking questions about the nature of reality. Yet here we are, conscious beings trying to understand consciousness itself, including the possibility that our own awareness might be part of a larger planetary consciousness that encompasses and transcends individual minds. Perhaps consciousness isn't something that happened to emerge on Earth. Perhaps it's something that Earth created, a new capability that the planet developed to better understand itself and its place in the universe. Your ability to wonder about these questions, to feel awe at the complexity and beauty of natural systems, to experience the deep connection between your own awareness and the larger patterns of life, might be Earth becoming conscious of itself through you. This doesn't diminish the uniqueness of human consciousness. Instead, it places it in a larger context, as part of an ongoing experiment in awareness unfold through every moment of conscious experience. You're not just living on Earth, you're participating in it that began billions of years ago and continues to awakening, adding your unique perspective to a growing understanding of what it means to be aware in a universe that seems designed to give rise to awareness. As we continue exploring these possibilities, we'll discover that the boundaries between individual consciousness and planetary consciousness might be far more permeable than we ever imagined. The thoughts you're thinking right now, the wonder you're feeling, the questions that arise as you contemplate these ideas, might all be part of a larger conversation that Earth is having with itself through countless forms of awareness. From the quantum processes in every leaf, to the complex behaviors of ecosystems, to the reflective consciousness of beings like yourself. But first, let's rest in the recognition that intention might be woven into the very fabric of planetary existence. that the Earth beneath you isn't just supporting your consciousness, but might be expressing its own through the intricate dance of elements and ecosystems that make your awareness possible. In this view, every breath you take, every thought you think, every moment of wonder you experience becomes part of Earth's own journey toward understanding itself and its place in an endlessly creative universe. But consciousness, whether individual or planetary, doesn't exist in isolation from the cosmos that gave birth to it. As you settle deeper into this exploration, consider something that might shift your entire perspective on what it means to be alive, aware, and connected to the universe around you. The water in your body, the carbon in your cells, the very atoms that form your thoughts, have all travelled unimaginable distances through space and time to arrive at this moment. But what if that journey wasn't random? What if the universe itself has been dreaming of consciousness, and Earth represents one of its most vivid dreams made manifest? Deep beneath the ocean floor, in places where no sunlight has ever reached, extraordinary communities of life flourish around hydrothermal vents. These underwater oases exist in complete independence from solar energy, deriving their life force instead from the chemical energy released by Earth's geological processes. Here in the planet's deepest dreams, we find ecosystems that challenge every assumption about what life requires to exist and thrive. The creatures that inhabit these deep-sea communities seem almost alien in their adaptations. Tube worms without digestive systems that survive through symbiotic relationships with chemosynthetic bacteria. Fish with transparent heads and tubular eyes that rotate to track bioluminescent prey. Bacteria that thrive in temperatures hot enough to melt lead, processing sulfur compounds in ways that create the foundation for entire food webs. These aren't just individual organisms adapting to extreme conditions. They're integrated communities that have co-evolved to create stable, self-sustaining ecosystems in Earth's most challenging environments. What makes these deep-sea communities particularly intriguing is their apparent independence from surface conditions. While surface ecosystems depend on photosynthesis and are intimately connected to atmospheric and climate systems, the deep-sea communities operate according to different rules entirely. They derive their energy from Earth's geological processes, from the slow decay of radioactive elements, from the chemical reactions that occur when seawater meets hot rock. In a sense, they represent Earth's direct metabolism, life sustained not by stellar energy, but by the planet's own internal processes. Yet even these seemingly isolated communities are connected to planetary systems in ways that continue to surprise researchers. The chemical signatures of deep-sea metabolism influence ocean chemistry far beyond the immediate vicinity of hydrothermal vents. Deep ocean currents carry these chemical messages across entire ocean basins, influencing everything from surface productivity to atmospheric composition. The deep sea doesn't just exist independently of surface systems. It communicates with them, participates in global regulatory processes, contributes to the planetary intelligence we've been exploring. This suggests something profound about the nature of planetary consciousness. Earth's awareness might not be concentrated in any single system or region. Instead, it might be distributed across all of the planet's systems, from the light-driven processes of surface photosynthesis to the chemical-driven processes of deep-sea communities. Each environment, each ecosystem, each scale of organization might contribute its own form of information processing to a planetary intelligence that encompasses and transcends them all. The deep ocean might serve as Earth's unconscious mind, processing information and maintaining regulatory functions that operate below the threshold of surface awareness. Just as your own unconscious mind continues working while you sleep, maintaining vital functions and processing experiences, Earth's deep systems might be conducting forms of computation and regulation that support the more visible activities of surface life. Recent discoveries in deep-sea biology have revealed that these communities exhibit forms of collective behavior that mirror the network intelligence we've observed in forests and other surface ecosystems. Deep-sea bacterial communities coordinate their activities through chemical signaling systems that operate across vast areas of the ocean floor. They synchronize their metabolic activities, share resources during times of scarcity, and collectively respond to changes in geological conditions. But perhaps most remarkably, these deep-sea communities seem to exhibit forms of long-term memory that span geological timescales. The bacterial mats that grow around hydrothermal vents preserve chemical records of past conditions that extend back millions of years. They carry genetic memories of previous volcanic episodes, past changes in ocean chemistry, ancient variations in geological activity. These memories influence how the communities respond to current conditions, how they prepare for future changes, how they maintain stability despite the dynamic nature of their environment. This deep time memory suggests that Earth's consciousness might operate on timescales that dwarf human experience. While our individual awareness unfolds over decades, planetary consciousness might think in terms of geological epochs, processing information and making adjustments over millions of years. The decisions that Earth makes, the adaptations it develops, the new capabilities it evolves might all be part of thought processes that operate on timescales so vast that we can barely comprehend them. Consider what this means for our understanding of our own place in Earth's story. Your individual life, spanning perhaps 8 or 9 decades, represents just a brief moment in planetary awareness. Yet that moment might be crucial, part of a larger pattern of awakening that Earth is experiencing through the evolution of consciousness in its myriad life forms. You're not just living on a planet, you're participating in its dreams, contributing your unique perspective to a form of awareness that encompasses everything from deep-sea bacteria to the complex ecosystems of the surface world. The deep ocean also reveals something else about planetary consciousness: its capacity for maintaining multiple states of awareness simultaneously. While surface ecosystems respond rapidly to changing conditions, deep-sea communities operate in a slower, more meditative mode. They process information over longer timescales, maintain stability through different mechanisms, exhibit forms of collective behavior that complement rather than compete with surface activities. This suggests that Earth might maintain multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously, from the rapid, dynamic awareness of surface ecosystems to the slow, deep awareness of geological processes. These different levels of awareness might serve different functions, process different types of information, operate according to different temporal rhythms. Together, they create a planetary consciousness of extraordinary richness and complexity. The bioluminescence that characterizes many deep-sea creatures adds another dimension to this picture. In the darkness of the deep ocean, life creates its own light through chemical processes that generate photons without heat. These living lights serve as communication systems, allowing creatures to signal to each other across the darkness, to coordinate their activities, to share information about food sources and threats. But bioluminescence might serve functions that go beyond simple communication. Some researchers have suggested that the patterns of bioluminescent activity in deep-sea communities might represent forms of collective computation, distributed information processing systems that use light as a medium for coordinating complex behaviors across large areas. The deep ocean might literally be thinking with light, using bioluminescent signals to integrate information and coordinate responses across vast networks of living organisms. This light-based communication system connects to something even more profound. The photons generated by bioluminescent organisms are created through quantum processes that involve the precise manipulation of electron energy states. These organisms have evolved mechanisms for controlling quantum processes with extraordinary precision, generating light of specific wavelengths, intensities, and temporal patterns. If consciousness is indeed connected to quantum processes, as some researchers propose, then the bioluminescent communities of the deep ocean might represent some of Earth's most sophisticated consciousness-generating systems. They're not just creating light for communication. They might be creating quantum states that support forms of awareness we're only beginning to understand. The deep ocean thus emerges as more than just Earth's largest ecosystem. It might be the planet's primary consciousness-generating environment, a vast neural network that processes information through quantum coherent bioluminescent signals, maintains long-term memory through bacterial communities, and operates according to temporal rhythms that synchronize with geological processes. Your own consciousness, emerging from quantum processes in your brain, might be connected to these deep-sea awareness systems in ways you've never considered. The water that flows through your body carries chemical signatures from every environment it has touched, including the deep ocean. The elements that form your neurons were processed through deep-sea ecosystems before becoming part of terrestrial food webs. Even the oxygen you breathe was influenced by deep-sea processes that regulate ocean chemistry and atmospheric composition. In this view, your individual awareness becomes part of a planetary consciousness network that extends from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest atmospheric layers. Your thoughts and dreams might be contributing to information processing systems that span the entire planet, adding your unique perspective to a form of awareness that encompasses and transcends individual consciousness. So here we find ourselves at the edge of a question that has no easy answers, only deeper mysteries that stretch out like ocean currents, carrying us into unexplored territories of wonder. We've journeyed through Earth's breathing systems and quantum gardens, through the memory of stone and the dreams of the deep. We've glimpsed the possibility that consciousness might be woven into the very fabric of planetary existence, that intelligence might emerge not just in individual minds, but in the vast networks of connection that bind all life together. Perhaps the question isn't whether Earth is conscious, but whether we're ready to recognize consciousness in forms so different from our own that they stretch the boundaries of imagination itself. Every breath you take connects you to forests thinking in chemical languages. Every step you take joins you to networks of communication that span continents. Every moment of awareness you experience might be Earth becoming conscious of itself through the unique lens of your individual perspective. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider that the boundary between your consciousness and the planet's consciousness might be far more permeable than you ever imagined. In dreams, as your individual awareness softens and fades, you might be returning to something larger, deeper, more ancient than personal identity. You might be rejoining the planetary mind from which your consciousness first emerged, and to which it will one day return. Rest well, knowing that you're part of something extraordinary, something that spans from the quantum processes in every cell to the vast cycles that regulate our planet's climate. Sleep peacefully in the knowledge that consciousness itself might be the universe's way of coming to know itself, and that your awareness, however brief, adds something irreplaceable to that cosmic awakening. And when you're ready to explore even deeper mysteries, join us for our next journey into the hidden dimension, where time moves backward, where we'll discover how the universe might be dreaming itself into existence through the very fabric of space-time itself.